All right, so today I want to talk about, the truth of spiritual entities, how they can affect you, and honestly, what most people get wrong. Hi, if you don't know who I am, I'm Jeremy Chimbert. I'm the owner and practitioner at Pacific Northwest Shamanic Healing. And I just want to put some clarity because entities is something I deal with a lot of my work. They are real, but it's not usually what people think. So, for example, have you ever walked into a room and just immediately felt like something was off? Or maybe you've gone through a period where you didn't feel like yourself. Your thoughts became darker, your emotions felt heavier. You couldn't explain why everything suddenly seemed harder. And across nearly every spiritual tradition in the world, there's a belief that human beings are not always alone in their energetic field. And today I want to talk about that. I want to talk about entities and not from a place of fear mongering, but really from a place of education. Because honestly, this topic has become filled with misinformation, Hollywood horror stories, podcasts, all sorts of things that are out there just sensationalizing what is. And don't get me wrong, some of these things are true and do happen. But these are usually worst case, and honestly, it's not usually the way most Hollywood productions make it seem. That's just trying to get people in the seats to scare them. And so my goal really isn't to convince you that every problem you have is due to an entity. It's quite actually the opposite. And so let's start with what I mean by the word entity. When people hear that word, they usually imagine demons. In my experience, there are demonic forces out there. There's some really dark things that can attach to people, but it's really rare. It doesn't happen as often as people think. Mostly what I encounter falls into simpler categories. Sometimes there's this lingering energy of someone who's died but hasn't fully moved on. These are usually your standard ghosts, right? Somebody dies in the house, an essence of them or their energy might still be in that house, might still be on that street. Sometimes it's just a fragment of that person reliving certain moments. Sometimes it's the whole person who is just afraid to move on and they get stuck here. That does happen. Sometimes it's just a fragment of another person's energy that became attached through trauma, unhealthy relationships, or intense emotional experiences. One example I like to give is I had a client once who, throughout her line and all the generations, alcoholism started to become a problem. And it usually happened around the same age. Well, diving deep into her lineage and looking into it more and looking at what was attached to her, she had a fragment of the soul of a great grandmother. And this great grandmother had two sons, and they died from alcohol, meaning she couldn't get them to stop drinking. They became not really caring about their surroundings, getting into more trouble, and eventually it just got them killed. So she died with a lot of regret. And that emotion broke off and became this energetic imprint, almost like a software running in the background. And it started to attach itself down the generational line. And all it wanted to do was fix that problem of alcoholism. But the problem is, that original problem was done when her sons died. So now the problem has to be brought into the new person's field, whether it was them drinking or someone they knew drinking. And the only way they could fix it was if that problem happened, but they didn't understand what was going on. And so my client at the time, her husband started drinking out of nowhere, and they were about to get divorced. All these other things were going on. And so by taking out that fragment part of the great grandmother, moving it onto the ancestral plane so that it can go back to its original soul and get the healing it needs, the problem stopped. It was almost instantaneously. Like the husband didn't want to drink anymore, got help, things got better. And so the relationship they could start working on again. And yes, there are darker forms of this consciousness that exist, and but it's far less common than social media would have you believe. And when things like this happen too, some people think it's a generational curse. And in a way, it could be a curse. It could be perceived like that. Everyone around a certain age starts dealing with alcohol problems. That seems like a curse, right? But in reality, it was an ancestral piece that was trying to fix a problem, but it wasn't the whole piece, so it didn't really have the full consciousness of what it was doing. It just knew that it needed to fix that problem. And the only way to fix that problem is to bring it in. And so that happens a lot. Um, and one of the biggest misconceptions, though, and I know it's kind of contradictory to what I'm mentioning, is that entities create all of our problems. In this case, yes, that was a problem that was created from that soul fragment. But a lot of times, entities that do come in that aren't of a soul fragment part, but maybe something a little bit more full consciousness, like a full soul part, a ghost, demonic force, darker entities, they're usually coming in because there's an opening or they're attracted to something that's already there. So hear me out. Think of mold, right? Mold doesn't create moisture. It grows where the moisture already exists. It needs the moisture to feed off of. It needs that moisture to live. And this happens the same way with unresolved trauma. Deep grief, addiction, chronic fear, long-term anger, extreme shame, these trauma woundings that we have that we don't work on and we don't fix put holes in our luminous energy field. And this can create an energetic environment that's easier for certain intrusive energies, entities to interact with. So usually what happens is the trauma comes first, the entity comes second. And this is why a lot of people get this wrong. It's that simply removing the entity attachment, it's not enough. It's like pulling weeds from a garden without fixing your soil. Eventually the weeds will return. And so real healing means addressing both the intrusion and the reason it had somewhere to attach in the first place. And that's why in my practice, clearing work is never separate from healing the deeper wounds. It just isn't. You have to do the work in order to keep things off. And so, how someone might know that something isn't quite right. So, again, these experiences, they can have many possible causes, physical, psychological, emotional, or spiritual, but this is why discernment's important. Some people notice sudden personality changes that don't feel like themselves. Persistent intrusive thoughts that seem foreign to them. Suddenly they're getting thoughts that they normally wouldn't have before or never have had before. They might feel emotionally heavy all the time, chronic exhaustion, despite any medical tests. All the medical tests says everything's normal and there's no reason for it. Nightmares that come out of nowhere, feeling like they're constantly fighting against themselves, or sensing a present that repeatedly appears, maybe during meditations or even dreams. Now, again, this doesn't always mean entities. The person could just have mental issues that need to be addressed. This could be therapy, medical intervention. These things can happen too. Tumors can cause things. But at the same time, sometimes the entities can cause the disease too because they're pulling off your energy, they're draining you, they're feeding off of you. And so you might be more sicker than usual. Maybe no matter how many times you get over a cold, you get sick again. Like you're always drained emotionally, physically, you're just bleh, you're drained. But we shouldn't always look at spiritual work being the end all be all. We don't, As practitioners, we don't want to be that hammer that sees everything that's out there as a nail. It could be, it could not be. You need to be able to discern what's really there and not there. And so with that, I mean, I personally, I do a scan on people. I check them. Sometimes things show up, sometimes things don't show up, and then we work from there. But you have to be able to know how to scan for them and look for them, look within a person's energetic field, see what is really there. Then you work from there. And one question I get a lot too is, can an entity control me? In my experience, most attachments don't take over a person's free will. Instead, they tend to amplify what's already present. I honestly do believe like a lot of suicides come from entities, with the intrusive thoughts getting in their heads, constantly pushing at them. But at the same time, if you think about it, they're like parasites. If they're feeding off of you, they really don't want to kill the host. They want to keep feeding. But there are some darker ones out there that they just want to play. They want to have fun. And sometimes pushing a person all the way to the edge to do things is what they're looking for. Now, again, that's rare, but I'm never going to sit here and act like it doesn't happen because it does. If someone's struggling with anger, that anger can become louder, right? They're amplifying it. Someone who feels worthless, those feelings can become more convincing. And that's really what happens is a person might have those feelings that get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then finally they don't know what to do anymore and they just finish. They just take care of themselves and try to move on and get relief. That does happen. But a lot of times, most people just don't even think about it and they just keep spiraling out of control, and other things might happen to them, like drug overdose or addictions of other kinds. You'll get some people might get whispers of thoughts that aren't their thoughts. And if they hear them long enough, it starts to sound like theirs. They start to believe that it is them. They start to think that they are crazy, that these things are just happening to them. But the good news is, we as humans, we're really, really resilient. Your soul is more powerful than most people realize. Entities don't own you, they don't define you. And they certainly, having them doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you have stuff to work on. And healing is possible. Sometimes healing does involve therapy, and that can help move things along. Sometimes it's about the nervous system, getting it regulated, that can move things along. A lot of times, though, I find you just need to remove what's there and then work on the trauma, work on your field, and build it up. And once you do that, you become resilient towards these entities from coming in. So if you want, like, imagine your aura field is like this perfect, shiny ball of light. And then when you have trauma, this life or past life, it starts having holes in it. It starts getting dirty. It starts getting blocked. And the energy is not flowing correctly, and that makes it weaker. And then these things come in and start feeding off that trauma and making that energy worse and making it not work as well as it should. And then that just makes you get sicker and sicker and weaker, and then maybe more things come in. It just becomes a loop. And so we just really just need to remove things and move forward. Now, one thing I would caution about too is, again, like I said, not everything deals with entities. Not everything is a curse. Every bad day, every argument, every setback, some people will blame everything on spiritual attacks. Somebody's attacking me because I'm too successful or I'm too much better than them or this person's putting a curse on me. Maybe. But from my own experience, most people really don't want to put that much effort into things. It's very rare when people curse other people. And honestly, most people don't know how to curse people correctly in a way that's effective. A lot of the TikTok witch spells, they don't work the way people think they do. They don't. I mean, sometimes you're just going to be exhausted. Sometimes you're grieving. Sometimes your nervous system is just overwhelmed. Sometimes your body just needs to rest. Not everything is about an entity. I mean, it's really like living your whole life in fear of that is no different than blaming everything on your astrology. Not every Mercury retrograde is going to be the end of the world. If you think it will happen, then when something happens, you automatically put blame and stock into something, and that honestly gives it more power than what it really has. And so there are ways to protect with this, and real protection isn't living in fear. It's just, being internally coherent, working on your trauma, living with integrity, setting healthy boundaries. Again, doing your shadow work, regulating your nervous system, maintaining your spiritual practices, working with your guides, working with your ancestors. They can give you so much protection that it's unreal, and they can start helping you heal. Reach out to them, make friends with them, work with them, build those relationships. And honestly, like sometimes the symptoms of entities, it's very similar to the symptoms of soul loss. And so again, that comes into that discernment. It's looking into it and understanding what's really going on. Your anxiety might be kicking off not because of an entity attached to you. It could be kicking off because of a way you died in a past life. A part of your soul broke off and hid to protect itself, but the rest of your soul remembers. And every time you're in the same type of situation that caused you to lose a part of your soul is now causing you to have anxiety because it's your energetic field, your soul's way of warning you danger because it hasn't healed from it yet. You see this a lot with people who like afraid of fire, have no reason to be afraid of fire, never got burnt by it, never saw anybody die from it, never had a house fire from it. But for some reason, the minute they see even like a lighter light, they flip out. Their body can't handle it. They're panic attacks. They're hyperventilating. They're just fight or flight mode from it. They might have died in a fire in a past life. It happens. It's too easy. Bring that soul part back, make you feel complete. And I'd say 99.9% of the time, that anxiety starts going away. If it doesn't go away, maybe you got to go back a little bit further and see if there was something else there. Because sometimes we repeat things and we lose you know, parts of ourselves over and over again due to the same type of experiences. And so that happens too. Same could be said for massive depression. Maybe your life is perfect. You have no reason to be depressed. You have everything you need, but you're sad. Something's missing. You don't feel complete. You don't feel like yourself. Yeah, you could think entities, maybe, or it could be soul loss, or it might be both. That's possible too. And so that's really what you want to make sure is when you're working with a practitioner that they check things properly and they don't just remove and then say you're good to go. You need to work on the original woundings that caused the openings in the first place. You need to remove the food source that was attractive. If you kill a rat and you don't take care of the food source problem and you always have food laying out on the counter or in front of your door, more rats are going to come. That's what they do. It's not good or bad. That's their nature. They're looking for food, and that's what a lot of these entities do. And so remove the entities, work on the trauma, and then I usually follow it up on a later session with the soul retrieval and bring back all the parts that might be missing to even make that field stronger. And so really at the end of the day, entities, they're really just one small piece of a larger picture. The real work, I should say, isn't chasing darkness. it's becoming fully yourself. The more brighter and more integrated you become, the more that you heal yourself and you're removing these imprints from these woundings and you're bringing back the soul parts and you're fixing all the holes in your field, you're not going to have any room for anything else to come in. You're not going to have nothing's going to have the opportunity to come in and start messing with you. It just doesn't. And this isn't all about, oh, once I become all love and light, nothing can bother me. That's bullshit. It's not true. If you don't work on your woundings, you don't work on your trauma, you don't work on your shadow work, you're always going to be open to these things. And sometimes it might feel like you're spending a whole lifetime working on stuff, but the more you do it, the smaller the gaps get, the harder it is for things to come in. There is an end goal to it. And so you just need to work on yourself. But the other issue is, like I said, if you have something that's in there, doing that inner work can be hard. One case example was before I started clearing the entities first, I was just doing some trauma work on somebody. I didn't know enough. And I'm sitting there, we're clearing out her chakras, working on the trauma. And within a couple minutes, like I just sensed something moving around in her and she dubbed over in pain. This thing was pushing back. It did not want me to work on the food source because it was still there and it didn't want to give up its home. And so I knew I needed to clear it out and then continue working. And so that's why now that's a policy I do first, is I check for those things first, get rid of them, then we move on to the deeper work. Because if they're there hanging around, it's harder to get anything done. It's just what it is. And so, that's really all I have to say about it right now. I think I might do a couple more videos where I break down the different kinds of entities that are out there. But I really wanted to just give a nice overview of entity work in general because I think it's important for people to know. And if you're curious, I do have a luminous energy field scan. You can do that on my website. I think it's like $33. I'll do a full scan of you, check out your house and property, make sure there's nothing there, or if there is something there, let you know. Then you get a free 30-minute intake call where we just go through your results and you can just decide what you want to do. You could take that scan, take it to another practitioner, see what they find. That's perfectly okay too. Whatever you want to do to make your life better. But I'm just going to tell you what's there, show you what's there, and then you make a choice. Do you want to work on it or do you not? Is it bothering you? Is it not bothering you? But it's okay. We all have free will in this, and you get to make the choice how you do things. So again, if you're curious about that, you can do the link below, set it up. If you have any other questions in general, you can just set up a free 15-minute discovery call with me where we can just talk about your situation, see what maybe I can do for you, make sure we're a good fit for each other. You really always want to be comfortable with whoever you're working with. And if it's not me, that's fine. I might be able to recommend some other people for you. Or again, like I said, take the scan, take it somewhere else. Maybe you already have somebody you go to on a day-to-day. I will say not everyone's been trained the same way as I have to check for these things. A lot of people really only get trained on surface level entity work and they miss a lot of the deeper stuff. I know I did in the very beginning for a long time until I got some training from a shaman over in South Africa. Once I learned from him, I see things all the time now and we take them out, not a problem. But again, don't get too hung up on if it's an entity or not. If you feel like something's off, go ahead and do the scan. But really, the important message I want you to take away from all this is just do the inner work. Work on yourself. Really look at yourself and where you're at. And when you start clearing things and making room, everything unlocks. It changes. You'll make more room for abundance and happiness and all sorts of good stuff. Relationships open up better. You'll be more at home with yourself. It all starts with you. Like everything starts with you. You gotta work on yourself. Don't worry about others around you. Work on yourself. So hopefully this was good for you. Let me know if this was interesting or not. I got other videos planned. Like I said, I'm gonna probably do a two-part series where I'll break down the lighter stuff to the darker stuff and kind of give a little bit more detail about what I see there and how we work with it. But ultimately, the process is the same regardless what it is. That's the beauty of it. It's really not that complicated. It just takes training and understanding. All right. So again, hope you enjoyed it. If you're new here, like, subscribe, share, all that other social media stuff. Uh, It's not my thing, but I'm here to do this stuff. So check it out. If you're also interested, I have another podcast. It's called the Shaman Story Podcast. I sit down and interview people about their journey into spirit. We really just talk about their journey, what they went through, and I just kind of interview them and see what they do. They talk about their different modalities, the things that worked for them. And if you resonate with them, that could be a teacher or a practitioner that you work with. That's what it's there for, is to really just learn from others what they went through. And some people that come on have some really crazy stories that you might resonate with, and sitting where you're at thinking that nobody would ever understand what you went through. And then you hear some of these people speak, you'll be surprised. And so check it out. I'll put the links in the show notes below. Other than that, just again, reach out if you're interested in working with me. And I hope you have a good day.